Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in the series Freemasonry and Satanism. Continuation of series number 71. This is part 2 of this book. Sometimes when I do these videos, if you've been watching them, you'll understand. The information is just so troublesome, horrific, concerning, maybe unbelievable, that I actually have to walk away from this for a couple days and forget about it. But back to the book. Jewish Influences in American Life. Volume 3 of the International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem. A lot of tough words there. By Henry Ford Sr., the automaker. A third selection of articles from a newspaper he purchased, Henry Ford, just to get the word out there about some concerning issues in America. So concerning, Congress was having hearings on the Jewish question or the Jewish problem. March 26, 1921 to November 1921. So where I thought I'd take off from here is the chapter on will Jewish Zionism, we got to start remembering that word, Zionism, bring Armageddon. If you're paying attention to world news these days and other bizarre concerns and issues, we all wonder if the world's going to end tomorrow. A lot of talk about the CERN, the hydrogen collider on the Switzerland-French border in Geneva, manifesting some kind of crazy realities. When they turn it on, they see things. We're talking about opening up a portal to another dimension, contacts of beings. And biblically speaking, it says they're supposed to, at the end times, the portals to Hades, to hell, will be opened. The demonic beast will come through. And again, as I've seen in some other videos, this would all be hard to believe. Nobody would believe it. Except. There's always that except. They got the Shiva, the demonic being, dancing demonic Indian god out front. The logo has 666 in it, the mark of the beast. They had a video they published that just has all kinds of sympathy, whatever you call it. It has all kinds of demonic dances and stuff. Right out of this world. Then they put the Shiva and Kali, big gigantic images, on the Empire State Building. You can see the videos on YouTube. And the goat on the Hoover Dam. They said it was the biggest projection ever. And George Bush, of course, reading My Pet Goat during 9/11. And the Shriners and other Masons bring in a goat into the lodges and they ride around on it naked, and I suspect they have sex with it, according to some videos. And of course the goat is the symbol for the devil, Lucifer. So it just gets more bizarre by the day. It boggles the mind. Will Jewish Zionism bring Armageddon? Page 114. When the British Army passed into Jerusalem in the memorial capture of the city in 1917. So the British Army went into Jerusalem in the memorable capture of the city in 1917. It would have been after World War I. Right after. While they were marching into the Bolsheviks into Russia in 1917. It's a coincidence worth paying attention to. and then proceeding to kill 100 million Christians and other good people, and destroy all the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temples, according to what I have read and documents that I have printed out. Should anyone question my word that say I'm making it up, I always keep hard copies of everything. The protocols went in with it, so they took the protocols of Zion philosophy with them. How to control the world, how to take over the world, how to destroy the people, how to enslave the people. The protocols of Zion. Go look them up, get a free copy online. Get a highlighter, get a notebook, and read them, and then cry. Because what you're going to read is what they've been doing. The symbolic circle was thus closed, though not in the way the protocols had hoped. The man who carried the protocols knew what they signified, and they were carried not in triumph, but as the plans of the enemies of world liberty. Remember, this book was written in 1924, I think. It might behoove us, 1921. It might behoove us to pay attention to what they were saying was going to happen, which obviously has happened. Zionism is the best advertised of all present Jewish activities, and has exerted a greater influence upon world events than the average man realizes. In its more romantic aspects, it makes an appeal to Christian as well as to Jew, because there are certain prophecies which are held to concern the return of the Jews to Jerusalem. When this return takes place, certain great events are scheduled to ensue. Henry Ford, 1921. Who you're going to believe? And since then, to this 2015, all these things are unfolding. Any questions? And I'm skipping some stuff, not reading everything. So you can go online, Abe Used Books and other used book sites or libraries or something and get this book. Apparently, they suggest getting these for the future. You may not be able to get your hand on these books. Having succumbed to the initial confusion of mistaken Judah for Israel, they have entirely mistaken the ancient writings that relate to these two, and have made a single tribe of Judah, whence comes the name Jew, and the hub around which all history and humanity swing. Judah was the tribe with which Israel could not live in peace over 2,000 years ago. So there were 12 tribes, 10 could get along, and 2 were the tribe of Judah, if my memory is correct. And the other 10 tribes could not get along with the tribe of Judah. There goes the phone again, my day job. Got to pay the bills somehow. Anyways, again, paying attention to today. The relentless pursuit to take down Assad in Syria is crazy. The murdering, the Arabs fleeing the entire Middle East. Something bigger, biblical is going on. Whether people want to believe it or not. And it says here, the tribe of Judah had the faithful gift of stirring up the same kind of dissension today. 1921. What are they doing in 2015? 9/11. World War II. And yet no one ever thought of charging the 10 tribes of Israel with anti-Semitism. So 10 tribes of the Jewish people are in opposition to the 2 tribes of Judah. But we don't call all them anti-Semites. But anybody who says anything about a Jew, they try to say you're an anti-Semite. Yeah, there's more to this than meets the eye. Not all Jews are the same. Not all Jews are the evil ones. And not all the evil ones are Jews either. They certainly have control of our politicians and our presidents and our leaders. Gordon Brown over there in England, the Prime Minister. New World Order. Kissinger says New World Order. George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr. New World Order. Bill Clinton, New World Order. The Pope says New World Order. Clinton says New World Order. One world currency. Does anybody get it at all that this is the most dangerous thing to humanity that could possibly happen? Microchipping everybody. This is right out of the Bible. Spying on anybody who's in opposition, anti-government, belligerent if you speak up, a threat if you say something, maybe assassinated. They want to remove the guns. How obvious does all this have to be? Back to Henry Ford. Forget what I say. Back to Henry Ford. Zionism is challenging the attention of the world today because it is creating a situation out of which many believe the next war will come. And the next war, World War II, did come. To adopt a phraseology familiar to students of philosophy, prophecy, always get these words wrong sometimes. To adopt a phraseology familiar to prophecy, it is believed by many students of world affairs that Armageddon will be the direct result of what is now beginning to be manifested in Palestine. Again, 2015. And they're getting more murderous and destructive over there now. The Israel's destroying Gaza and the West Bank, trying to finish off the remains of the Arabs. Cluster bombs, phosphorus, like molten lava poured on the children and women and men, destroying the properties. Meanwhile, you got Aliyah, called The Return. And they're marketing and using propaganda and causing chaos all over the world, trying to get all the Jews to return back to that area. They call it the return. This is all biblical too. And then after all this return comes and they have these other activities, then the world is to be destroyed. And it looks like these people are trying to bring it about. What's it got to do with CERN? And high-tech lasers now on top of big, gigantic aircraft and planes. They got these laser beams that can shoot down anything. More modern nuclear-type bombs, atomic-type bombs, electromagnetic pulses. They're relentless spending money on all this destructive material. And then politics, they're using Agenda 21 and Common Core and the gay agenda and New Age religion to mess with the minds of everybody. Destroy decency. This could only be biblical. Some demonic being has to be behind all this, cold-blooded reptoid probably, according to David Icke and others, which are using all this UFO and alien propaganda on everybody. Satellites in space projecting holographic images. Look up Project Bluebeam. And one of the plans they have, people will look up and think they see Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad and hear voices in their ears like God is talking to them. It's a big event they got planned. For these, if no other reason, the subject becomes important. With Zionism as a dream of pious Jews, this article has nothing to do. With Zionism as a political fact, every first-class government is now compelled to have to do something. They have control over the USA. Prime Minister of Israel Sharon said in a heated argument in his Congress that I've said on many videos and looked up, and there's more than 1 million results on any search, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar, please look it up, don't believe me. It's not going to get anybody anywhere if people don't realize how serious this is. He says, we hate America, we're going to destroy America. Why? Because they don't want to be our slaves. The Georgia USA Guidestones, it says they want a population worldwide of 500 million. The sustainability propaganda coming from the United Nations, trying to stop every farmer and every resident of every property owner from doing anything. Having chickens, growing crops. This lies and deception, global warming, global cooling, ice age, climate change. Meanwhile, you look up at the sky and they're spraying heavy metal chemicals everywhere. Fluoride in the water, fluoride in the toothpaste, fluoride in God knows what else. And that makes people lethargic and slow, slightly demented. You got to get off that fluoride. Your brain becomes, it thinks, it's almost like there's a veil between clarity of thinking, and you can't keep a single thought. They know what they're doing. All these other drugs they put people on. Little kid in school acts hyper and is asking questions. Attention deficit disorder, put them on drugs. It's normal for a young kid to want to be inquisitive. Alright. It is a bigger question than the German indemnities or American immigration, because it lies back of both and is rapidly proceeding under the cover of both. Zionism has taken over the government, and Zionism is communism. And people laugh and giggle, communism. They think it's just bogus. It's because the cartoons made you think that. The TV shows made you think that. When they were making Hogan's Heroes, which is a fun comedy to watch if you're an American. But think about this. They were bringing all those scientists from Germany to America for our space programs and weapons programs, because they were so smart. They weren't dumb as those soldiers on Hogan's Heroes. But here at home in the United States, while they were bringing all those German scientists here to start up all these black op projects that have caused all the insanity that we're experiencing now, are so smart, but they were portraying to we citizens as they were so dumb. And we were so dumb we believed it. And the Germans were the most industrial people at the time. That's why they had World War I. Hogan's Heroes, the comedy show, was a ruse, was a deception, was to ridicule the Germans and make the Americans believe it. People just don't think of that. It's like 2.5 Men, or Seinfeld sleeping with a different girl almost every show. It's mind control. They want to destroy Christianity. Just people ponder and think about it, and they can see it then. And they got witchcraft and all this other occultism they're into. Well, what do they give us? Bewitched? Stuff like that. I Dream of Jeannie? Stuff like that. So everybody gets misled. Thinks everything's funny. Starts laughing when you talk about it being real. They did that on purpose. This is 1921. Look at the seriousness of what's going on here. The CERN with the Shiva out front. Shiva and Kali on the Empire State Building. Football halftime shows. Shiva dances demonic beings. Madonna doing it. Even with horns with Katy Perry. The paintings at the Denver, Colorado airport. So many symbols all over the world. Things going on. It's obvious to see. Once you realize what's going on, everything makes sense. And the nightly news is all lies. Trying to make the Assyrians and Assads beheading people, gassing people. Lies, lies, lies. And when they do wind up taking down Syria, they'll go after Iran. And somewhere in the middle or before or after, they'll take down the people in the USA, Canada, Europe. It is worthy of note, if only in passing, that Zionism, in the active modern political sense, took its rise radically and geographically where Bolshevism arose. Remember, the Bolshevik Jews went into Russia after World War I, killed the Tsar and his family, and proceeded to kill, they say, 100 million Christians and other good people. Namely in Russia, and that's its center. The seat of the Inner Actions Committee was in Berlin. So they took control of Germany, they took control of Russia, they took control of China, they took control of the United States in 1913 when they took over our Federal Reserve, or created a Federal Reserve, which is a private bank. And Woodrow Wilson said later on that he regretted that. That was the end of America. Then they tricked the United States into going to war. All right, there was always a close relationship between the Zionists of Russia and the New York Callahan, as is evidenced by public utterances made in Russia after the revolution, in which the Callahan was extolled. At the time the war was declared in 1914, 6 months after they created the Federal Reserve in the United States and basically took over the United States and controlled our politicians, they were planning to take the USA to war, and the people didn't even know it. I think Woodrow Wilson was running for president on the platform, "I will not take our young men to war," when he knew he was going to. They lie. They lie. They're lying now. So at the time of the war was declared in 1914, the Inter-Actions Committee was spread about in various countries. For example, Dr. Shemaiah Levin of Berlin was in the United States and remained here. He was a Russian rabbi, German scholar, and cosmopolitan. Although his headquarters were Berlin, he remained in the United States and became recognized as the leader of the Zionism until the great Jewish shift to Versailles. That's where they had the treaties where they punished Germany after World War I with such an outrageous amount of penalties and money owed that the German people couldn't see daylight, and nothing was able to get done. They were dying and starving. All planned. Another member of the Inter-Action Committee was one Jacobson, who was in Constantinople. When he saw that Constantinople could no longer be the center of Zionist politics, he left and went to Copenhagen, Denmark, where in the neutral country he could be of practical usefulness to the Zionists by transmitting information and funds. And this is in the Guide to Zionism, page 80. Guess I got to get that book, Guide to Zionism. I'm not reading every sentence here. Get the book. Crazy. Dr. Levin gave his sanction for the shifting of the center of Jewish gravity from Berlin to America. And as early as August 30, 1914, a month after the outbreak of war, an extraordinary conference of American Zionism was called in New York. And our politicians were not informing we the people of this. It took Henry Ford to go buy a newspaper to get the word out. It almost ruined his auto dealer manufacturing business by boycotting him until he apologized. That's what they do, these Zionists. They take over everything. Conspiracy, murder, intrigue. Who knows how many owners of large companies and stuff have been poisoned and accidents called death. Their deaths called accidents instead of the murder that it was. We hear about this all the time. Holistic doctors lately have been dying. Doctors investigating the harmful effects of vaccines have been dying. Astronomers have been dying. Physicists have been dying. All kinds of intelligent, aware people, which is what they do during revolutions. They call it the purge. But it gets done quietly, silently, up until the big event when they actually have the revolution. And then in the middle of the night, city and all over the United States and world, certain people who have been targeted, probably named in their computers as a threat to the New World Order, wind up missing, get abducted, taken away. Nobody knows where they go. In 1914, the Jews apparently knew more about the probable duration of the war than the principles. So the war was all staged, planned with the Balfour Agreement to get England to annex the land in Palestine and give it to the Rothschilds to create the State of Israel. If they brought their money and America into the war, because England, the UK, was losing. Germany gladly pledged the land of Palestine to the Jews, but the Jews had already seen what Wilhelm had done in that ancient state when he enthroned himself on the Mount of Olives. Evidently, the Allies won in the contest of making promises, for on November 2nd, 2017, when General Allaby was pushing up through Palestine with his British army, Arthur James Balfour Agreement, the British Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, issued the famous declaration approving Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people. What gave him the right? And all the problems that we've seen. Our young men and women going to war and other people dying. For 100 years it's been murder and mayhem on the people of the world, and the people of the world are, apparently, many of them are none the wiser why it's all happening. I've had people ask me why. Who's doing this? What's the reason? Well, Henry Ford is telling us, and the other books that went out. The wording of it came from the British Foreign Office, but the text had been revised in the Zionist offices in America, as well as in England. The British Declaration was made in the form in which the Zionists desired it, and the last clauses were added in order to appease a certain section of timid anti-Zionist opinion. And this is in the book Guide to Zionism, page 85 to 86. Now please read the declaration and note the italicized clauses just referred to. Okay, here we go. His Majesty's government view it with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civilian and religious rights of non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. Well, I'm here to tell you now from my research, they have caused havoc and destruction, economic destruction, and fermenting anti-Semitism hatred in countries all over the world to get Jews to leave. And they have been murdering and faking all the activities in there in Palestine, and murdering and bombing and taking all the Palestine's land since then. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is look up Zionism and images, and you'll see a series of maps that show every 10 or 20 years the increases of land that Israel has obtained. And they're trying to get the last of it now. So they're not abiding by this Balfour Agreement, which they never intended to. Zionism is of particular interest not merely because of the quarrels which have arisen among the leaders over money. It is the war of interest against capital, but also because of the light it throws on the two great armies of Jews in the world. The light it throws on the two great armies of Jews in the world. The way in which they use their powers where they can, and the trouble that always embroils the nations which become Jewish tools. I'm here to tell you now that the 18 trillion that we so-called owe to the Federal Reserve, the USA taxpayers, none of that money was spent on us. It was on this takeover of the world. But our politicians authorize it because our politicians are controlled by these people. We do not owe this money, but they're not going to let people know that or believe that. When they take down the USA, it's unsustainable, they will say. Some people ask why Jewry, which is capitalistic, should favor Bolshevism, which was the creators of communism, which is the announced enemy of capital. It is an interesting question. Why should a New York Jewish financier an officer of the government of the United States, helped finance a red publication which even our tolerant government cannot stomach. In addition to the fact that it is only Gentile capital that is attacked, the answer is that the Jew who has fallen for the worship of the golden calf is anxious to keep in the good graces of the Jews of the East. So you got the Jews of the East and the Jews of the West. The Mongolian Jews, Khazars, Khazaria, Yiddish Jews, all kinds of names, Ashkenazi Jews, who are rampaging against orderly systems of society. 1921. They are rampaging against orderly systems of society. And that's why they have to destroy Christianity. It creates an orderly system of society and behavior in nice neighborhoods and streets and children and going to the park and walking the dog. But no, they want drugs, and chaos, and perverted sex, promoting homosexuality, transgenderism, and much more craziness. It is quite useful when there is a revolution in Paris to have the 600 houses which you may own spared by incendiary mobs. So when they have a riot in Paris, the Jews' homes that they own don't get attacked. It's because it's all controlled. Everything from Ferguson to Boston bombing, Sandy Hook, Batman shooting, all of it. 9/11. Whereas Rothschild's houses. Zionism, and by the way, in Germany, none of the Rothschilds or these insider Zionist manufacturing plants were bombed either. There's a coincidence. But they were bombing everything else. Same thing probably over there in Iraq, Afghanistan, and everywhere else in the world, Syria. They're destroying everything owned by non-Jews. Zionism has been one of the subjects upon the Western and Eastern Jew can unite. So no matter what kind of Jews they are, they do unite on Zionism. And what is Zionism? To rule the world from Mount Zion in Israel, Jerusalem area. Indeed, it was the Eastern Jew that compelled the Western Jew to take a favorable stand on this matter. The Jewish gentlemen who are receiving the freedom of our cities today in their various aspects as German and British scientists are Eastern Jews. They have come to a contest with the Jews of America on the question of money. The Jews of America have smothered some very ugly charges. The Jews of America have smothered some very ugly charges. The Jews of the East, more recently of Germany or England, are not likely, page 118, to be browbeaten by the moneybags of Jewish New York. So while the rest of us are just trying to get along, we got this conspiracy going on to take down the whole world. 1921. And look where we are today. According to what I'm observing, they're getting closer and closer. For the Eastern type of Jew knows of a situation in which money is the most useful thing in the world. And that is why he is feared and favored by Western Jewry as the golden calf. So their control of money, just like the Rothschilds taking over creating the Federal Reserve in 1913, December 21, Christmas vacation, while the politicians were on vacation, they conspired and accomplished that fact. And that's when the United States freedom fell, the sovereignty. They controlled the money. Then they controlled the politicians. The real split in Jewry will come when Jews of vision begin to support the attempts which have been made to liberate the Jews from their leaders. The internal squabble means nothing but a squabble of leaders. Nothing has changed since then. 100 years they've been moving forward. Probably crashed the United States economic system around 8 times, maybe 9 times. People would prosper, then they collapse it and they buy everything on pennies of the dollar, ruining non-Jews' family lives, generations and generations of work they had toiled to gain some ground, all destroyed. Then they would allow things to get better for 10 or 20 years and crash it again and again. And they're doing it now in 2015. But when the Jews themselves divide, one side for 20th century light and the destruction of the class power of the selfish leaders, then may we look up hopefully. So Henry Ford is hoping some of the Jews wake up and see what's going on. When the Jew recognizes the honesty of his critics and the righteousness of what they charge, then there will be another split. But not before that. The division of Jewry as evidenced by the contempt of the Revolutionary Party for the financial party, and as even more strongly evidenced by the fear of the Revolutionary Party by the financial party, is being brought about by the insincerity of the Western Jews' Zionism. So you don't think there is something called Zionism in a New World Order and New Age, documented in these books I'm going over. Basically, New Age is basically anti-Christianity and wants to bring about the Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt. Perverted sex and everything. Murder and mayhem and chaos and robbery and theft. Anti-Ten Commandments. Anti-God. Anti-non-Jew. Anti-Christianity. The Western Jews says the United States is the promised land. See, there are people who wake up and live their whole lives and train their kids just to be pursuing everything. And they're really focused on it. And Christians and other non-Jews just don't have that mental capacity. So they think they're smarter because of that selfishness and greed and obsession for power. And when they get there, they wear the fine clothes with jewels all over it, and history, and rubies, and diamonds, and opulence, and carriages with 20 horses and 100 slaves. This is their obsession. Not your normal person's obsession. Like I got a bright light behind me. God's sun is always shining on me. So it seems. All right. Knowledge of political Zionism is worthwhile also as an authoritative illustration of what the Jew does when he is in power. And Tex Mars has made those charts up, and so have others, and books on the subject. But all those people behind Obama and Bush and CEOs and all this stuff worldwide are usually Jewish. I guess Zionism, dual citizens of the United States, or whatever country they're in, and Israel. There is a plot, and these people are not benevolent, and they don't have any compassion for us. Just the opposite. They hate us. They want to see us dead. They need to keep some around for slaves. How many was each going to have? 185 or 2,800 slaves each? Heretofore there has been Russia to illustrate this, but now there is Palestine. With every fact against them, with every traveler and observer giving them the lie direct, there are still Jewish spokesmen and poor befuddled Gentile fronts who insist that Bolshevism is not Jewish, and that the Russia is not now governed by Jews. Well, in 2015, we're certainly enlightened to the fact of history of what happened. It is just this constant denial of facts this failure to use their opportunity to be honest, that is going to be the judgment of Jewish leaders. Bolshevism all over the world, not in Russia only, but in New York, Chicago, New Orleans, and San Francisco, is Jewish. Communism is Jewish. Freemasonic societies, lodges all over the world are Jewish. We've gone over the Blue Lodge Handbook. It's all about King Solomon's Temple. Got a crow out here. Moving on. It will be very difficult for most irresponsible Jewish spokesmen to deny that Palestine is Jewish. The government is Jewish. The plan of procedure is Jewish. The methods used are Jewish. Does anyone rise to deny that? Scarcely. I got a crow squawking out here. Very well, Palestine will do to illustrate the genius of the Jew when he comes to power. Back to the book. The crow is gone. Professor Albert T. Clay in the Atlantic Monthly. Will anyone declare that this long-established and thoroughly respectable Boston publication is anti-Semitic? Warns us that the information about Palestine, which we receive in America, comes to us through the Jewish Telegraph Service, which is the Associated Press of worldwide Jewry. So the worldwide Jewry secret societies control the Associated Press, the banksters, Rothschilds, the Illuminati, and the Zionist propaganda. So they've been lying and cheating us for 100 years, at least. The latter, he says, with its harrowing stories of pogroms in Europe and its misrepresentations of the situation in the Near East, has been able to awaken not a little sympathy for the Zionist propaganda. This propaganda of pogroms, that's these activities that apparently were against the Jews, thousands upon thousands of Jews killed, amounts to nothing except as it illustrates as gullibility of the press. So while they're killing Christians, they're saying thousands and thousands of Jews are being killed, but it's being published by the Associated Press, which is owned by them. No one believes this propaganda, and governments regularly disprove it. 1921. And are we supposed to believe what they report in Syria and all over the Middle East now, Ukraine? It's lies. Gun shootings, all these things they're doing, lies. But the fact is that it indicates that something besides facts is necessary to keep the scheme going. And I talk to people that I go out in town, see my friends, and I try to mention anything that I'm discussing, and they will get angry, and they believe the lies on the boob tube. Let the nightly newscaster say 100 people were beheaded by some Syrian governmental leaders, and everybody will believe it. Wasn't it Bush who tried to say, or Obama, that Assad was gassing his people? Proven false. But they're pushing, and they're pushing, and they're pushing. And a lot of gullible Americans are buying it, Europeans. Poor Europeans bought that hook, line, and sinker, the European Union, and have lost all their nations and their freedoms and their rights. Non-elected officials are governing them. There has been a struggle between the native inhabitants, whom the Balfour Declaration sought to protect, in Palestine, and the new-come Jews. And we've gone over the Aliyah pictures. For 60, 70, 80 years, they've been flying in and shipping in, train on trains or whatever, Jews into Palestine area, bombing and destroying more Palestine neighborhoods to build more settlements for the Israeli Jews. All biblical prophecy. And you know what's interesting? Many of these Jews apparently appear to be very white. Now think about it. Back then, the Hebrews were not white. They were brown. Jesus was brown when he escaped from Jerusalem because the king had ordered all children under 2 years old to be killed, because there was a prophecy that a young man would be born and rise up and be more powerful than he was. So an angel appeared and told Jesus' mother and father, Joseph, to take him to Egypt. Egypt was brown, not white. If Jesus was white, he would have said take him to Europe. Just some stuff I learned. Makes sense to me. As in the famous Easter disorders of last year, the wounded in the hospitals show that the Jews were armed, and the natives fought with whatever weapons they could find on the spot. The conclusion of all impartial observers under the circumstances being that the Jews prepared for and sought the fight with the unprepared natives. Four more pages here. That the lawful inhabitants of the land ought to be driven out in spite of the governmental promise of the contrary. This was in Palestine back then when they made the Balfour Agreement, which said that the native inhabitants would be protected. It didn't happen. We all know that. They faked all kinds of scenarios like they did with the bombing of the U.S. Liberty ship that was sitting offshore monitoring the Israelis attack Egypt. But the Israelis didn't want that reported. So they tried to bomb the U.S. ship Liberty to smithereens while our soldiers were on deck waving flags. The Jewish jets were relentless. Pounded and tried to kill them all. But the ship survived. Only to have the media that they own, the newspapers, the Associated Press, and the President of the U.S. and other leaders, to not publish all that information in the news and tell the American people who the real culprit and enemy of America is. They wanted Egypt to look bad. Put the blame over there. One of the first Easter rioters, Jacobiski, whom the British authorities sentenced to 15 years in prison, was released immediately upon the arrival of Sir Herbert Samuel, and is now traveling in state, and is talked of as a possible successor to Sir Herbert, although he is originally one of the Russian Bolsheviks, come down to practice the gentle art of that tribe in Palestine. So make no bones about it, if they take over the United States, which they already do in the court systems, like our Supreme Court recently, declaring that other states in the United States could not ban gay marriage. What, how many justices do we have on the Supreme Court? 4 or 5? How else were they going to vote? They are trying to destroy America. Most people know that the Jews' first priority, allegiance, is to their homeland, Israel. And if they weren't those kind of people, they wouldn't be sitting on the Supreme Court, in my opinion. The government is Jewish. Sir Herbert Samuel is High Commissioner representing the power of the British government, which holds the mandate over Palestine. The head of the judicial department who appoints the judges of Palestine is a Jew. Christian and Muslim judges who do not give the Jews a shade the better in the proceedings are ousted. Wow, this sounds like Professor Higgins' The Jewish Utopia. They have to, even in the United States, they rule for the Jewish person in the lawsuits and other activities against the non-Jewish person. And the poor victim standing there trying to hire a lawyer and have his rights defended is in a losing case before he even is aware of it. If he's not a Jew, he's not going to win, generally. A condition not unknown of in New York. It says it right here. In New York, it's the same way. They have to look upon favor when a Jewish person comes through the court system. This is common knowledge, and a lot of it's in Henry Ford's newspapers and his books. In fact, that the heads of all departments are Jews, a former New York Jew being head of the Department of Immigration, New York, which had made splendid rulers for the protection of Palestine from an undesirable class of Jews, rules so well adapted for the purpose that if the Congress of the United States should adopt them, the cry of persecution would girdle the world. It is to be noted that the Jewish government of Palestine is very much that of Russia, mostly foreign. Trotsky came from the east side of New York, one of the leaders in Russia in the Revolution. Creators of communism came from New York, one of these Bolshevik, Yiddish, Zionist Jewish groups which have taken over our world. The gentleman recently released from Bolshevik custody told the writer that the governor of his prison was an ordinary Jew who formerly lived in 14th Street in Detroit. You don't think there's a plan? American City is representative in the Bolshevik government of Russia. Practically every big American city is represented in the Bolshevik government of Russia. Wow, every city in the United States. There is another full-fledged government waiting in this country for service whenever necessary. So they have a secret government behind the scenes ready to take over. The methods being adopted to get the land are such as will fill the world with indignation once the world fully understands what is being done. And that it is done with the knowledge and approval of the Zionist commissioner is indicated by the fact that he suspended the activities of the British officer who was endeavored to stop the abuse. So he suspended the activities of the British officer who was endeavoring to stop the abuse. It was the old game of lending money at an exorbitant rate of interest to people hard-pressed by war and crop failure, and then seizing their land when they could not pay. This is what they did in the United States numerous times. John Perkins, who wrote the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, tells us they were doing this all over the world to topple governments. And presidents and other leaders who would not comply were assassinated. A lot of people know this. South America, Middle East, Central America, Middle East. Can name a couple presidents that really were ousted pretty bad. Libya, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Iraq, had nothing to do with 9/11. If payment failed, the land was to go to the government for redistribution, not to the Zionist bank. This was the humane plan which the Zionist commissioner forbade upon the British officer resigned. So they were just trying to get the land to go back to the bank, but not the Zionist bank, and they had to nip that in the bud. Some effort was afterward made to redress the terrible act, but there it stands as the well-considered action of Jewry in power. So they were seizing all these Palestinian people's lands because they had no money, and so they loaned them money they couldn't pay, then they could take their land legally. Just like they do in the USA, and probably all over the world in Europe. Then follows what is described by every impartial observer as an arrogant attempt to appropriate everything in sight. But there was Great Britain's, whose laws do not condone theft. The only schools that have been established in Jerusalem had been built and manned by the so-called Gentiles, although the Jews of Jerusalem had been the pensioners of worldwide Jewry for centuries. As long ago as 1842, Dr. Murray McCheyne noted that the Jerusalem Jews cared nothing for schools because their children were only growing up into pensioners too. So the Jewish families, generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, never have to worry. They've got so much money and so much control that the children don't even have to get educated because they're going to have pensions. Nice, huh? Things we don't know. Talk about arrogance, selfishness, deception, theft. But Christians, with a warm regard for the holy city, set about to improve the miserable condition of the Jewish inhabitants. And thus it came at that time of the Zionist invasion, a considerable number of Jewish children were in attendance of the schools. The Council of Jerusalem Jews then caused it to be published in the Hebrew Daily that parents who did not withdraw their children from the schools would be punished. So the leaders of the society, the high-up Jews, didn't want the poor Jews to go to schools provided by the Gentiles. If any parent refused, whose name was on the list of the American Relief Fund, the fund would be withheld. So these people were getting pensions, relief funds from America. And if they went to the Gentile schools in Palestine, their money would be cut off. An interesting bit of news to subscribers to that fund. So people all over the world were sending money to the fund, not knowing that. Doctors would be forbidden to visit the families that had children attending to enlightened schools. So if you went to public school in Palestine back then and you were Jewish, doctors were forbidden to see you. Their names would be sent to the blacklist at the places where circumcision was performed, so that newborn descendants of the recalcitrites might be refused the rite of Moses. So they couldn't even get circumcised. They would be denied all share in Zionism, benefits, and funds. See, they didn't want them to go to regular schools with anybody else. If they were in business, they would be boycotted. If they were workmen, they could get no work. Anyone who refused, let him know that it was forbidden for him to be called by the name of Jew. So if you went to the Gentile school, you couldn't be called a Jew. Their names will be put upon a monument of shame, and their deeds be made to reproach them to the last generation. This is pretty serious. If they are supported, their support will cease. If they are rabbis, they will be far removed from their office. They shall be put under the ban and persecuted. And all the world will know that in this justice there has been no mercy. It is the Jewish Bolshevik spirit all over again. Remember in Russia when they took over, they killed 100 million Christians and other good people, mostly by starvation. And they vowed no mercy. If any Jew sitting on the judge seat had any mercy on any non-Jew, he would be dragged down and killed, according to what I read. So many people have been vainly endeavoring to reconcile with the Russian temperament because it is so un-Russian. It is tyranny, and not the tyranny of strength, but of meanness and darkness. Sounds like Luciferian Satanism. Stuff going on at CERN with Shiva out front, opening the portal to the demons below. I added that. It is now perfectly clear what was meant by Dr. Menenis, who is an Anglican bishop of Jerusalem, when he said, "The immigrants so far brought in to Palestine under the Commission did not include many respectable English Jews, but they did include a great number of Russian, Poles, and Romanians, many of them thoroughly Bolshevik in their attitude to the government." These would be the Yiddish Jews who came to New York and who were arrogant and insulting and rude in the United States, who was allowing them to move here. This is an attitude that still prevails today, obviously, with these people controlling our politicians. If this spirit obtains at the beginning of a movement, which the Christian would have been taught by propaganda to regard as a profoundly religious and respectable exodus. It burdens the imagination to forecast what will be done in a period of full and unquestioned rule. There you go again. What happens when they do accomplish their new world order and new age? Will it be illegal for a man to marry a woman? You have to sin every day to make their demonic God happy. It's just an affront, an offense they want to do to God. Why? Seems to be like a much bigger thing going on here than most people can comprehend, including me. Observing and weighing the events and the tendencies of the Jewish rule thus far in Palestine, it is not difficult to see the purpose of it all. They do not distrust the world's willingness to let them have a state. Indeed, it is amazing how naturally the Jews place confidence in that portion of the world they have always affected to despise. So there you go. You know, here we are helping them get their country that they wanted and blackmailed England, and they still despise non-Jews, we the people of the world, anywhere. They want everybody to be their slaves that they allow to live. Is this true? He doesn't know how they will contrive to drop the principles and practices which are so destructive to social comedy everywhere. But the deep-seated in the Jew is a distrust of himself. And he feels that, patient as the mandatory power may be now, it is doubtful how long the patience will hold out under the blunders and brutalities that will be inseparable from Zionist rule if any deductions can be drawn from the facts at hand. And I'm not reading everything. I'm skipping over sentences, so get the book if you'd like to read it all. And by such schemes as the land grabbers devise, described above, to get so strong a hold on the situation as will seriously complicate it whenever Great Britain shall feel it to be her duty to the world to step in and attempt to bring some kind of order out of the chaos. Remember, George Bush Sr. said, out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order. George Bush Sr. also said that someday Americans will pledge allegiance to the United Nations, which is under the same Zionism Jewish control. And they even have a meditation room that's all occultic and symbolism, and there's logos and information, and they're controlling Agenda 21, trying to take away the property rights and freedoms of Americans everywhere, and other world citizens in Europe. Already the dangerous proposal has been made to organize a Jewish army for the protection of the Suez Canal. Instead of thinking of roads and farmsteads, of vineyards and oil presses, of schools and sanitary villages, the Jews are thinking of elevating themselves into the military power that shall stand between East and West, on the most strategic strip of ground in the world. The whole situation is fraught with danger, and men who wish well to the Jews are alarmed and saddened by the prospect. All right, continuing on, page 124. Jewish Influences in American Life, Volume 3 of the International Jew, The World's Foremost Problem, by Henry Ford, Sr., a third selection of articles from the Dearborn Independent, a newspaper that Henry Ford purchased to get out some information about some things he saw. And the Associated Press, as we are aware even today, would not publish. The court systems were favoring the Jewish people, even when they committed crimes. And God forbid you weren't Jewish and you had to go to the court system. Probably be excessively tough on them. Be much worse. There are three elements of danger in the situation as it exists today. The overwhelming overwhelmingly predominant Bolshevik element that is being poured into Palestine. The intense egotistic and challenging nationalism that Zionists exhibit even before they get a potato patch, the taste for world politics and world power, and the radical confusion which now exists in Palestine and the world. European Union, it's so sad. They're being destroyed. Canada, people are saying. The same things are happening there in the United States. Here in the United States this year, they had Jade Helm dispersing equipment and troops all over the United States. Not telling the American people what they were doing. UN vehicles with big UN symbols on them, white vehicles, tanks, trucks, everything. And we the people do not have a need to know. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, let me read this. These combined are dynamic. The first is more vital than many realize. Already the Jews have gone to Palestine at great sacrifice, and for pious reasons are complaining that instead of the Psalms of David, the people are singing songs of the Red Revolution, communism. And instead of meeting for instruction and prayer, there are riotous gatherings extolling Trotsky as Messiah and the Soviet kingdom as heaven. Of the third anniversary of the Jewish Revolution in Russia, the streets of Jerusalem are placarded with sentiments of blasphemy and treason, and May Day this year was devoted to the exaltation of anarchy. They're celebrating anarchy. Do people understand what this new age and new world order is all about? This fact will be of interest to students of prophecy. I keep saying, this is something bigger than me and you, right out of the Bible. Demonic Satan worship, Satan behavior, wishing for anarchy and chaos, when us Christians just want peace and nice neighborhoods and healthy lives for our children. But that's not what they want. Let's make it clear. It is unimaginable that the nations responsible to humanity for the conduct of this important strip of territory will remain supine while Bolshevism spreads under the false pretense of a religious movement favored by Christendom. The Jews of Palestine will turn on their sponsor nation. The Jews of Russia will come down to help. Great Britain and perhaps the United States will defend the old pure vision of the Jerusalem redeemed. Then will come to pass the prophecy of Zechariah, and Judah himself also shall fight against Jerusalem. Judah also. It is a thought to make a Jew bethink himself where the lawlessness of the East and the materialism of the West will lead him. Against Jerusalem. What a terrible ending of the Judah's present mad delusion. Palestine has been called the center of the earth. Wasn't that where Jesus was born? Jerusalem? Nazarene? It is. The power that controls Palestine controls the world. Aha! Although exercising no sovereignty over the land itself, Great Britain's control of adjacent waters and of Egypt and Persia and India forms the key to her power. The white race, thus far been the chosen people, to whom the dominion of the earth has been given. Thus far been the chosen people, to whom the dominion of the earth has been given, the white people. In question 12 of the questions and answers published by the Department of Education, Zionist Organization of America, this occurs. 12. What are the commercial possibilities of Palestine? The location of Palestine between the three continents favors foreign trade. All this lends itself to dreams of future glory, and many Christian friends of the Jews have pleased themselves by conceiving of a universal Hague at Jerusalem and a new social order going out to bless the nations from Zion. It is the idea conveyed by men like A. Burrow in his books like The World Significance of a Jewish State. So again, all this is much bigger than most people are aware. All this might be expected if the Jews of today were Old Testament people, anxious to reestablish the law of Moses, which are conceded to be the best safeguards ever devised against pauperism, people being paupers and poor, on the one hand, and plutocracy on the other, people ruling us from family generation to others, like kings and queens. But Palestine has not fallen into the hands of that sort of Jews. Before the dream can be fulfilled, Judah must come to himself, as he has not yet, from the old world, from far from old, the world is. Word is. Spit it out. Far from of old, the word is. And Judah also shall fight against Jerusalem. The racial situation in Palestine just now is very delicate. Americans do not understand it. The Zionist propaganda has always been accepted on the assumption that Palestine is the Jews' land and that they only need to go back. It is an historical fact and political fact that Palestine has not been the Jews' land for more than 2,000 years. There are in Palestine 500,000 Muslims, 500,000. 105,000 Christians. 65,000 Jews. 1921. The industry of the land is agriculture. Engaged in this are 69% of the Muslims, 46% of the Christians, and 19% of the Jews are in agriculture. Yet, as the result of a war bargain, the Balfour Agreement, it is handed over to them as regardless of the native inhabitants as if Belgium had been handed over to Mexico. Many of the natives are Semites, like the Jews, but they do not want the Jews among them. This is a strange fact for those who use the term anti-Semitism, who do not. Why do real Semites also dislike the Jews? So the Arabs are Semites and the Jews are Semites. Surely Semites are not victims of anti-Semitism. The Balfour Declaration, as well as the terms of the mandate adopted at San Remo, recognize the rights of the native races. Indeed, everyone who knows about the people who have been native to Palestine for 2,000 years recognizes their rights. Everybody accepts the Jews. So the world recognizes the rights of the Palestinians, except for the Jews. Bethlehem was the Christian town, as befits the birthplace of Christ. Yet the Jews have contrived that 2,000 Bethlehemites leave Palestine rather than submit to what they see coming. So they're forcing the people who live in Bethlehem to move out. Huh. How many people know that? The other races are not so placid about it, hence the trouble. It is now that the last clauses added to the Zionist historical declares, in order to appease a certain section of anti-Zionism opinion, begin to get a meaning for the reader. Was the purpose only to quiet disturbing questions until all the arrangements were made? Evidently, that's true. It was then a dishonest appeasement. So the Balfour Agreement was a big lie. General Allaby promised these native races of Palestine that their rights would be respected. So did the Balfour Declaration. So did the San Remo Conference. So also did President Wilson in the 12th of his 14 points. But Judah says, let them get out. The last clauses were added in order to appease a certain section of timid anti-Semitism opinion. Let them get out, says Israel Zigwell. We must gently persuade them to trek, to leave. After all, they have all Arabia with its 1,000,000 square miles, and Israel has not a square inch. There is no particular reason for the Arabs to cling to those few kilometers, to fold their tents and silently steal away is their proverbial habit. Let them now exemplify it. Aside from the false of using the term Arab, there is the delightful Jewishness of it. Let them give it up to us. We want it. Americans have been in their land for less than 150 years as a nation, and there is China and Arabia and Syria for us to go, if we should want to, but we prefer our own country. So do the native races of Palestine, who have dwelt there for 2,000 years. The watchmen on the towers of the world are alarmed what seems brewing in Judah's geographical cauldron. Issue of May 28, 1921, in the Dearborn Independent newspaper. So a little bit about the goings-on and creation of Israel in the land of the Palestinian people through the Balfour Agreement, which was made because England, London, the UK, was losing its war with Germany, which was a growing industrial state. And the United Kingdom, London was United Kingdom, and they were controlling countries like China and India and a lot of the world, which is kind of an interesting question by itself. And in the American War for Independence, 1776, we had fought England and attained our freedom. So it appears now we can say that when they created the Federal Reserve in 1913, England took the United States back, as well as its hold on Canada and a lot of the world, through these royalty families, Illuminati banksters, the same Zionist people who took over Palestine and have been proceeding to eliminate the Palestinian people since, intentionally, and also are now currently the people behind the New World Order and the New Age gay marriage agenda. For a country where only less than 1% of the people in the United States are Jewish, why are there 4 or 5 justices on the Supreme Court who are Jewish? Why are the majority of the people advising or working for our governments and controlling our officials and corporations all Jewish? Seems in their attitude is arrogant and nasty, and they hate Christians and other people and like to control and destroy, and they have no mercy or pity. They don't want to be fair and equal, and of course not all Jews. With that said, I'm going to continue something I had on the last video that I said I was going to continue. Something crazy. But apparently in the Jewish world there is a something called the Talmud. And I read some of the description here, if I can find the front page. From the Talmudic law. So I read all this. Put a little note where I left off on the last video. You can see here, 71 part 1, I left off right there. So the Bible, there's apparently 3 books that are important to the Jews. Like in Christianity, we have Catholics or Baptists or Methodist or Protestant. So in the Jewish world, they have the Talmud, or the Torah, or the Old Testament. And apparently, the Old Testament from Noah coming down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. Moses coming down the mountain. The Old Testament's, I guess, a good book. And the Torah, I'm not Jewish, apparently is a good book. And if the rabbi graduated from a Jewish school for rabbis, and it was based on the Torah, he would be a Torah rabbi. But if a rabbi went to a college or school for Talmud, he would be a Talmudic rabbi. Now, apparently the Torah and the Old Testament are rather good books, biblical books, godly books. But the Talmud seems to me a little bit demonic. And more rabbis, according to one commenter who sent me a message, he goes, there haven't been any Torah rabbis graduating from universities anymore. They're all Torah, Talmud, no Torahs. So I'll start reading this description of what we're dealing with Talmudic law, with Talmudic rabbis, Talmudic Jewish people ruling our world, and how they think, and what we have to deal with, and what we just learned from Henry Ford in his book about the conditions and what happened in Palestine. How does Talmudic law affect the USA? Right where my finger is here? How does it affect us? The first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution are called the U.S. Bill of Rights. The law expressly forbids the establishment of a state church. This is the only legal rule of law in the United States. Establishment of a state church. In this new age, new world order, that is all going to be a Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt, satanic rule of our state, forcing gay marriage on everybody, another insidious, insane, psychopathic activity. The original Bill of Rights is a one-page document. Any literate second grade student can read it. The Jewish Egyptian Talmud is enormous. It includes mysticism, magic, and unwritten hidden text. And much of the discourse about it is only written in Hebrew and practiced in Egyptian secret ceremonies that worship the light being. Wow, that's not New Age. I don't know what is. Lucifer's the light bearer. The Freemasons of France gave us the Statue of Liberty, which looks like it has a man's face and it's holding the torch. We're all led to believe that it's a woman. But is it their demonic god holding the torch, the light bearer? And if you look at pictures of the devil on the internet, Baal or whatever, it's usually just shown as a goat being with a goat head, a woman's breast, and a man's torso. Half man, half woman. Androgynous. So there's a Statue of Liberty, an androgynous man holding the torch, being the light bearer, coming from a Masonic lodge in France as a gift to the United States, deceiving the whole nation, all of us. Norsen Guri, a Liturvich rabbi, insists, so we've got a rabbi here saying this, Jewish law is the basis of our legal system in America. Jewish law. Aren't we a Christian nation? Anybody want to argue that we're not a Christian nation? Go look at your calendar and look at the date. It says 2015. Drive on all the major cities all over this country and you're going to see big Christian cathedrals. Now there has been a plan to just change all that and change history. But it is 2015, and it was 2015 years ago that Jesus was born. So if they want to say we're not a Christian nation, they might think about changing the calendar so they could let us people know with clarity where they're coming from. But if you're any kind of student at all paying attention to the New Age and New World Order, you know what they're up to. Deception, war, and murder. We've been living through it for 100 years and longer. So the Lurvich rabbi insists Jewish law is the basis of our legal system in America. But that's not entirely true. Property rights, common law, natural law, and the need to protect individuals from tyrants is the basis for the legal system in America. And what they're using to destroy that, let's make it clear, the controlled United Nations is forcing Agenda 21 upon our country. Local communities, taking away people's property rights, talking about sustainability, not using natural resources, basically making slaves of the people, wanting to move them into condensed buildings and cities like communes, like they do in Russia, like they do in projects. I wonder how many people all over the United States want to live in a project, like animals, which they call us, by the way, going, animals. American law was designed to protect the people from the government. They're trying to destroy the Constitution. Make no mistake. Common Core, Agenda 21, sustainability, global warming, global cooling, climate change, terrorism, confiscate the guns. Jewish law is not American law, it's Israeli law. It's also a vast ancient library that claims the Jews are God's chosen people. It has another set of laws for non-Jews who must obey a complex set of confusing rules and regulations that give control over all daily life functions to an agent of the Jewish court. Now you see what they're doing with the New World Order and gay marriage and everything? Every single thing that people do has to be controlled, down to the minute details. Taking away freedom. And if you're not agreeing mentally, and they call you an anti-government belligerent, you might be targeted and assassinated, imprisoned. Much like the religious law practiced by priests of the Holy Roman Empire and the Protestant churches in Europe, Jewish law does not protect the rights and liberties of the common-born man, as does U.S. law. It protects the rights of the elites. And we're all seeing this now, the police and all the security systems on all the government buildings. It's them against us, so it seems like it's growing ever so more every day. The world is changing before our eyes. So they're protecting the elites to confiscate all private land and direct the lives of the people placed under their care. Well, you know what the Georgia USA Guidestones say, they want to reduce the population, so being under their care will not bode well for us. U.S. law is also based partially in American colonial understanding of the Old Testament and the amendment to that law known as the New Testament. So Jesus Christ, with his words, is the New Testament. It might behoove us to read that. We get our rights and privileges from God, not by these Jewish leaders who have taken over our government and created the Federal Reserve and taken away the freedom of all the European nations and created the European Union, taking over all the countries in South America, Central America, Africa, and the world. Jewish law was modified and changed by the Son of God himself. When Jesus came and the New Testament was written, that was by Jesus. Known to the world as Jesus Christ. Jewish law is not anywhere near the same as the principles of the Christian biblical law. Jesus spent a lot of time arguing against Jewish law. Christ challenged the authority of the Jewish rabbis and taught his followers to a more peaceful path to heaven. So here we are, spiritual beings. When we do die, we're going somewhere, and Jesus was teaching the way to that path. And the Jewish hierarchy back then did not like that. Old Testament Jews and early Christian Catholic Church regularly slaughtered their enemies, as directed by the vengeful God of the Old Testament, and brutally enforced their religious rules and laws against their common membership. Jesus was brutally tortured and crucified for breaking Jewish law. So we know why they hate Christianity. There is much Christian scholarship regarding Christ's discourse with the Pharisees. Bobby Gardner's recent studies have uncovered many interesting aspects of these great debates. I might have read this in my last book review, because I see another line here on the page. The American founders, many of them were devoutly religious Freemasons, believed in a universal creator. The creator of all life was called God. So I'll just skip down to the bottom here. Schools across our nation can no longer celebrate Christmas holidays. Merry Christmas is considered politically incorrect. All American children, including the Christians, are forced to worship the pagan earth goddess, Earth Day, in public schools. The UN International Court at The Hague is also home to the Temple of Understanding. Estonia's new communitarian idea of community spirit is based on the Talmud. That's the bad book for the Jews, from my opinion. When you hear what it says in there, you probably agree. Hegel and the theosophical ideas expressed by Madame Blavatsky, that's New Age, and the Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt, New Age. They, along with many other gurus, introduced Americans to the worship of Lucifer as the ultimate light being. 1,000 Points of Light is a whole program based on satanic community. And George Bush used to say 1,000 points a lot. Satanic community-oriented principles. While I don't approve or condone these wacko belief systems, it was never a concern of mine if others practiced them, as long as they didn't harm anyone as part of their creepy rituals. But in a communitized America, we're all being required to bow before a court enforcing Talmudic communitarian laws. Get it? Global warming, sky spraying, sustainability is all Talmudic communitarian laws of the New Age. In a recent CNN poll, over 80% of American respondents voted to keep the words "One Nation Under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance, and the words "In God We Trust" on the Federal Reserve notes. Yet for some reason, American justices of the peace can no longer hang the Ten Commandments in their halls of justice. So there are people in high places trying to change our world. It says right here in yet another document, Henry Ford. They hate Christianity. They like anarchy. They want to see destruction, and they want to control everything. It's a different vision of reality than what we have experienced growing up. The young people today are growing up with this kind of world. The cartoons are brainwashing them, the school system. We find all this Talmudic law balancing very amazing, considering what's happened to Judge Moore, who refused to follow a court ruling that decided he must remove a monument of the Ten Commandments in the Alabama State Supreme Courthouse. In our layman's opinion, we think the Torah and the biblical Old Testament are what most Christians understand to be Judaic law. Others tell us Judaism is not a religion, it is a law regionalized. So the Jews are trying to get the rest of us to believe that they don't have a religion. But what they do is clearly satanic and demonic. The Talmud is the controversy, even though Judaic Talmudic law includes several books that include the Old Testament and the Torah. Not only was the Old Testament the Word of God modified and edited by scholars throughout the centuries, portions of the Talmud were never written down. They contained secrets passed orally only to elite initiates, much like Freemasonry. Hence my series here, Freemasonry and Satanism, is very apropos, and little did I know that when I started this a couple years ago, that I had chosen such an appropriate name, title. As with the Christians in many different denominations that represent it, the Torah Talmud is also an area of contention among the varieties of Jewish people. The key factor to Talmudic law is that it is not fixed law. It is constantly challenged and rewritten according to case law precepts. And unlike the Christian arguments, anyone who objects to the overall authority of Talmudic law, or even portions of it, is labeled anti-Semitic. Even the Jews are labeled anti-Semitic if they don't like these Talmudic laws that are created. Many American Jews do not even identify with Judaism. Many American Jews do not identify with Judaism. It is also important to know most Jews do not originally support Zionism. And as I've told you before, look up Zionism in images and you will get educated to that truth. Today, opposition to political Zionism or the religious Talmudic laws are condemned as a racist attitude towards Jewish people and are subject to criminal prosecution in a growing number of countries. And so it will be also in the United States if they pull off the revolution. Now, we've read what it says in the Talmud, and we're going to read it again. Why is the international community adopting, as its part of the emerging global and law enforcement, so less than 1% of the world's people are forcing their Talmudic law on 99+% of the world's people? The effects of the imposing a law nobody understands is staggering. U.S. versus Talmudic law. So it's got some references here on this document. The 7 universal laws, also referred to Noetic law for Gentiles. United States Congressional Support, HJ Resolution 104. Now there's a Sanhedrin who needs the Supreme Court. So now that there is a Sanhedrin, this Talmudic law, who needs a Supreme Court? Because these Jewish, Zionists, arrogant, evil people will make decisions. And they got another one here, Bill PR 95, 1997, an act respecting Institute for Advanced Judaic Studies. Education Day USA by Mr. Polak. Rabbi Aiden Even Israel Steinsaltz, elected to head Sanhedrin, June 2305. Also present at the meeting on Monday, though not seated in the 71-seat semicircular rows of chairs, was famed archaeologist Dr. Vidal Jones. He is working on this Sanhedrin to establish a system of courts. He is working with the Sanhedrin to establish a system of courts for non-Jews adhering to the 7 laws of Noah, which the Torah obliges all of humanity to follow. One of those laws is to establish courts of justice. A high court has been established by the Sanhedrin for such purposes, and a subsidiary of that court will soon be established by the United States, in the United States as well. Stuff is serious. That's the Solomon's Temple. This stuff is serious. Continue moving on here. All right. I'll try to finish this document. Protect My Children from the 10 Commandments by Louis Vaughn, Free Inquiry Magazine. Protect my children from the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet. Desire what somebody else has. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Protect my children from those. We should all be adhering to those. The first 5, one God. Is there more than one God? Well, apparently there's some evil gods. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Obey the Sabbath, the seventh day. Honor thy mother and father. Don't worship idols. Protect our children from this? But then they want us to give our children what we see on TV. I can't watch Texas Rangers anymore. I study these programs and try to watch and see what they're doing. But every time they flash that Texas Ranger star up on the screen at you, it now has an I and an S on it. And I see all kinds of occultic symbol on the Texas Rangers. Makes you wonder how deep does this rabbit hole go? Alright, in other words, prayer rugs can be purchased with federal funds to accommodate suspected Muslim terrorists in Guantanamo Bay, and Jewish chapels can be built with federal monies. But Christians can't sing Silent Night in the classroom. Get it, everyone? Jewish chapel built with federal money? No outcry from the ADL, the ACLU, or the AU. Catholic League President William Donahue, September 15, 2005. Do you get it? They want to destroy Christianity, and they want to protect their children from Christian values. So what is the opposite of Christian values? That would be Satan. And more stuff here is Kentucky pagans on the Ten Commandments. So they have these organizations, Church of Satan, fastest growing church. Witches' covens, a lot of people, witchcraft is increasing. The pagans, the Ten Commandments go to trial. Another thing, just stuff referenced in this document. Crazy. While we have had complete silence and acquiescence on the part of the ACLU concerning the establishment of the no-hide laws as our official state religion, we hear them talk loudly against the posting of the Ten Commandments in the courtroom as a part of a display about the foundation of our legal system. According to the ACLU, the display of the Ten Commandments in a public courtroom, even in the context of there being among many documents that represents the development of our legal system, of our federal government, makes the statement that a specific religion is seen as part of the foundation of our Western civilization. Because of this, the display is promoting this religion, which is a violation of the First Amendment and is so unacceptable. Well, again, I say that the satanic symbolism and stuff that they are allowing everywhere is also a religion. And that's taking over our government, and that's not a separation of church and state. So I guess what they're saying, a separation of Christian church and state, but not the devil's church and state, where they can lie, cheat, and steal, and have pedophilia with children, and kill them, and sacrifice them, and drink their blood, and kill us, and rob us, and make us slaves. That's okay for them. But God forbid people be decent human beings. They don't want that. That's what it says here. The Ten Commandments advocate believing in God, observing the Sabbath, and not worshiping idols. Friedman added, noting that the different faiths have different versions of the document, those are religious beliefs that should be left to each individual. And the stuff that they own, the media, and they own the TVs and the movies, they are mind controlling the people for the demonic religion. They're not leaving it up to the individual to make a choice for themselves from childhood. Especially in a courthouse, people should not be made to feel like outsiders in their own community because they may not share the prevailing religious view. And I've had people tell me, comment, when I write essays on press releases, and I say people shouldn't be killing people, and people get ugly at me and tell me that I'm wrong. Murder, they think should be okay. That's what Aleister Crowley said you should be able to do. That's what one of my good friends screamed at me one day. He said that, I can't bear to say this, but he said even if I had raped his daughter, he wouldn't know how he would feel and could probably not be mad at me because I could do whatever I want. This is the thinking of people. I couldn't believe it. Even another family friend of mine, defended the fact that if her daughter wanted to be a prostitute, it was okay because they made a lot of money. How can you fathom this from a family member saying that? This is the propaganda and mind control that's out there. I would like to know why the ACLU, our press, and our politicians have remained silent for 14 years about the passage of Public Bill 102-14. Looks like my crow is back. In this obvious violation of our First Amendment guarantee of our right to worship God as we choose, and the guarantee that our government will not establish a state religion, while at the same time the ACLU attacks legitimate public expressions and displays a religious-oriented material such as the Ten Commandments in the courthouse or nativity scenes at Christmas. The ACLU is attacking all those. The same people who are behind the Talmudic Jewish people taking over the world, the Zionist people, who are clearly bringing us a satanic Statue of Liberty holding the light bearer, Lucifer religion. They've taken over the Vatican. Look up what a Jesuit priest is. It's the military force of the Vatican. And the leader of that would be called a Black Pope. It makes one wonder why the Black Pope would be now the real Pope. What is the Vatican getting ready for? Why do they need the military leader in charge of the church? This is serious business here, what they're doing. Alright, what does ACLU stand for? Another little note here. Public interest law includes legal aid to the poor, government service, and work for nonprofit organizations like those concerned with civil rights, the environment, children, or the elderly. Alright, as a yeshiva undergraduate, she's majored in Judaic studies, won a Judaic Studies Award, and served as a Jewish law editor of a student newspaper. She received a bachelor's degree in January 1978, magna cum laude. Kuchen speaks Hebrew fluently. Before law school, she pursued an in-depth study of the Talmudic law in Israel, and later worked as a law student intern for a lawyer in Tel Aviv. Well, I would have to say that this Madeleine Kuchen, named director of a new public interest law programs, Stanford University News Service, 9894, is a pretty smart lady. So what more does it say here? Bio of Stephen Keith Green, March 2, 2005. Supreme Court weighs commandments. Cases 76% of Americans support such displays, according to the polls. So as a democratic society, shouldn't the majority rule? Isn't it ironic that the Muslims, the sworn enemies of Israelis' religious manifesto for conquering the entire Middle East, are today the primary targeted people in America's war on terror? So America is fighting the people who are trying to take over our world. We're fighting the wrong people. Plus, there's the plans for establishing a new Middle Eastern region between the European Union and the North American Union. The probability of this being a coincidence is even more remarkable when we consider the fact that the Arab nations were Americans' best friends in the world prior to the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. So all that description of all those activities we talked about before Apparently Madam Cochin did that, and this is Stephen Keith Green reading on some more. We thoroughly examine Israeli political influence on the USA on our militant Zionist page. We barely began our studies of Islam in our unfinished Middle East page. The Talmud as a dialect, a game theory, and Freemasonry. The Talmud as a dialect, a game theory, and Freemasonry. An outline of the history of game theory by Paul Walker. The Talmud in its first historical reference in the timeline for the game theory, going back to 500 AD. In 1985, it was recognized that the Talmud anticipates the modern theory of cooperative games. Each solution corresponds to the nucleus of an appropriately defined game. Talmud. The ultimate purpose of the Talmud is to seek out truth. The Talmud dialectic can be compared to an inquiry in pure science, particularly in the sphere of mathematics. All right, so much for the Talmud as a dialectic. And that was by R.D. Brother Leon Zido's Masonic Qualifications. Craft Masonry, Initiate of the American Lodge, number 86. Santiago, Chile, 1959. Moved to Israel in 1962. Founder of La Fraternidad, Lodge 62, Tel Aviv. First Spanish-speaking lodge in Israel. Working at the AASR, elected to various offices in the Grand Lodge of the State of Israel until receiving the title of Honorary Assistant Grand Master, 1995. So we got their high-level Freemasons supporting the Talmud. How the American international Jewish leaders deal with criticism of the Talmud Zionism. So they're saying Zionism and Talmud is the same. The Awareness Center in the Jewish Coalition Against Sexual Abuse Assault, JCASA. The case of Rabbi Jan Menzer, Chief Rabbi of the Israel Jan Menzer Prayer for Jonathan Pollard Justice for Peace release. September 28, 2004. Rabbi Menzer's letter to Bush, President Bush, appealing for a convicted Israeli spy release. ADL Director Abraham Foxman is reported by the JTL to claim on November 11, 2003, that anti-Semitism is today hidden under the guise of anti-Zionism. Sharon says anti-Semitism drives Israelis' critics. This is the guy who says we control America, Prime Minister Sharon. Sharon's remarks followed a recent European Union poll that found that a majority of EU citizens see Israel as the greatest threat to world peace. The survey caused an uproar in Israel. ADL says extremists use the Talmud to promote anti-Semitism. We read here what goes on in Israel with Henry Ford's book. Anti-Defamation League press release. Canadian Jewish Congress files a complaint against a Ukrainian web host under the Human Rights Acts. The 34th Zionist Conference calls for coordinating the fight against anti-Zionism. So they want to fight anti-Zionism. They want to fight anti-ruling the world from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They want to fight us people who don't want the Constitution to go away. YellowTimes.org claims one of the 2002 resolutions was to criminalize anti-Zionism. So they want to take Christianity out of the schools, but Zionism is clearly satanic. But they want to criminalize anybody who's not anti-satanic. You hear the words coming out of my mouth? They want to criminalize anti-Zionism. Look at the symbols of Zionism. B'nai B'rith calls anti-Zionism a form of anti-Semitism. You got to go look this stuff up and decide for yourself. I'm just reading my highlighted notes here. May sound a little boring, but There's a lot. The Truth About the Talmud, a document expose of Jewish race hate literature by Michael Hoffman and Alan Critchley on Radio Islam. And more Jewish mysticism about the Judaic text. Yale College Library, 3 texts, the Talmud, the Torah, the Zohar, Kabbalah. Yale has a link to the codes of Jewish law. Dictionary of Metaphysical Healthcare Unnaturalistic Methods, J.K. 1997, Jewish Meditation, Jewish Mysticism, the Kabbalistic System of Insight, Judaic Approach to Personal Growth, promoted by Shabbat Levitch of Long Island, New York. The Kabbalah, different pronunciations and spellings, Kabbalah, Kabbalism, Kabbalah, is an electric and multi-form mystical system of ancient Jewish origin analogous to yoga. It encompasses analogically demonology. It encompasses, get this, angelology, got to get these words right, angelology, demonology, meditation, and prayer. Now remember, it's going to be illegal to be anti-Zionism. Answers.com has definitions of Kabbalah from several sources. Kabbalah is the spelling generally used to indicate the use of the Kabbalah as an occult and practical magical system. And if in its modern form, it is the creation or adaptation of a Phileas Levi, or even more so, S.L. McGregor's Mathers, co-founder of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucian type of group, Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive who bragged about having sex and killing children, and witches in those groups abduct people and have sacrifices on a regular basis, including the Illuminati. Like 8 times a year they have these witchcraft holidays. This was a magical organization which incorporated Judaic Kabbalah, Egyptology, Rosicrucianism, I'm not making this up, it's right here, ritual magic, astrology, tarot cards, Indian Taiwan system, as interpreted through theosophy, the Kabbalist Tree by Jane Swanson. Go look up this document. I'm going to show you the title again so you can find it. But they're saying here they're going to try to make anybody anti-Zionism, which is all this magical Kabbalah witchcraft stuff. You're going to call you an anti-Semite and make it illegal in countries and stuff. To how far is this going to go? What I'm trying to say. When Henry Ford, the Jewish influence is on American life, in America. So Madonna opens Hotel Kabbalah. If you've ever seen Madonna do her dances, they're pretty grotesque. With David Sanderson and Luke David, Evening Standard 9, 2005, Warnings About the Kabbalah Center by Josh Simon. What is Kabbalah? Simply, it is a way for individuals to connect with God by being like God. Imitation is much more than flattery. It is the ticket for immortality. Kabbalah posits that the spark that is the human soul and can be elevated until it merges into the endless, eternal light that we call God. I think you're supposed to go back to where we came from when you die and your spirit leaves your body. Just saying. You know, Jesus in St. Mark, in the Bible, the book of St. Mark, would be walking into a town, and Jesus looked like a regular man at that time, and this person was possessed and all curled up, and the villages, you know, were tolerating this insane man. But when this insane man looked up and saw Jesus walking in St. Mark in the Bible, he reared up his head and he goes, "What are you doing here? It's not my time to go." He recognized Jesus for who Jesus was. And Jesus took his hand and said, "Out of him," and cast that spirit out of that guy, and that guy returned to normal. We're going to go over that in one of my future videos, right away. There's more here to know. For those unfamiliar with Christianity, several denominations are taught occult studies and mythicism, and magic contain elements of evil. While many of our founders were Christians, there you go, our calendars 2015, the U.S. natural rights were based on God's law. The U.S. Bill of Rights allowed for no establishment of state religion. And with this new age, new world order, it is a state religion. Make no bones about it. The United Nations occult room is all occultic. The Illuminati, Freemasons, and all their secret mystery school of Babylon teachings is some kind of religious worshiping the demonic entities. The faith-based initiatives is another area where the reinvented government balanced this former barrier. Christians are taught seeking information or visitations from spirits is like calling on the devil. Even in the Bible it says on there, you have to test the spirits. I've been a lot into, I've spent many years on psychic research. I could tell you some things. You don't want to use a Ouija board. You don't know who you're incommunicado with. Nikola Tesla would get on stage and say, he wasn't the genius everybody thought he was. Entities would come and give him visions and tell him things about his inventions. I found that out in a lot of the biographies of these ancient people who were famous and not so ancient, were psychic and seeing apparitions and dreams. Edgar Cayce, when he was a child, would lay on a book and wake up and memorize the whole book. There's something more going on. So, calling on beings from spirits like the devil, even though both testaments are filled with prophecies and visions that must be believed to have come directly from God or his angels. Many of the old world Christians' practices were intermixed with superstition and ritual, and today there are a growing number of Christians who are tolerant or practice certain aspects of occultism. Many Christians today see no harm in believing in animal medicine, astrology, tarot, psychics, yoga, the channeling Saint Germain, I Am, or the channeled Course of Miracles. Marianne Wilmington, Course of Miracles teacher, and the author of Return of Love, was a regular guest on Oprah for years, until I realized she is a communitarian, promoting communism. I was basically one of her followers. The rise of white witchcraft, feminism, paganism, and ancient Eastern religions in the formerly predominantly Christian United States continues to be a major influence in U.S. politics. Today things have changed so much that all forms of mysticism are considered trendy and click and cool, and the Kabbalah is becoming popular with the mysticism movement, led by the American pop stars Madonna and Britney Spears. Everything I've been saying here, for a deep and unsettling critique of modern Christianity and the various denominations and their contribution to the Talmudic dialectic, read Jewish Persecution, Chapter 6 by Jackie Petru. Pause it and you can read that for yourself and get the name. Florida's Holocaust Museum History Wing explains the complexity and confusion over Jewish text. And I've shown you this picture before, and I've read some more, and it may be photoshopped. George Bush carrying the Talmud. There's arguments on the internet about that, so I don't know if it is or it isn't. In Judaism 101, Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, the Talmud contains vague hints of a mystery school of thought that was taught only to the most advanced students and was not committed to writing. There are several references to ancient sources of Messiah, Bereshit, the work of creation, and a Messiah, Magravich, the work of the chariot of Ezekiel's vision, the two primary subjects of mysticism, though at that time, Hanukkah, Jewish law, a separate course offering at this site. So what I'm trying to say is they're trying to change our world society, and it doesn't look for the better. They're trying to get rid of the U.S. Constitution. They're bringing us the Agenda 21, sustainability, global warming, global cooling, whatever they can, terrorism, droughts, weather, chaos, saying bad things are happening. They're trying to bring about this evil world, if you want the simple answer. And the Jewish people think that they're God's chosen people, and the rest of us are goyim cattle and have a separate set of laws on how we're treated. And apparently, if you don't embrace your slavery, you'll be their enemy. There's much more here. I'll just show it to you. You can pause it and read it. So it says here a lot of nice pictures on the the original ACL text. Shamis News Service, keeping Levitevich informed, has a lot of nice pictures. So this is one of their websites. Including President Bush waving to reporters on his way to the new Daf Yam Shah, carrying a copy of the Talmud, and pictures of menorah ceremonies in the White House and the Capitol state government with Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. The picture of Bush with the Talmud in the website, I found it may be fakes, according to this guy. I found this on Robert Lindsay's blog. The completely bizarre photo of George Bush carrying the hefty Balvi Talmud, one of the Jewish holy books, appeared originally on a website of the radical Jewish supremacist Levitch faction. Although at first I thought the pitch was authentic, further research shows it may have been in fact a photoshopped fake. I apologize for anyone I mislead. In a few days I reported the pitch as authentic. I'm reading this because, you know, you're supposed to doubt everything. And I guess I'm almost done here. I guess what I'm trying to say is you need to go look up the Talmud, find out what kind of book it is. And on the last videos I did, it clearly says in there that the best of the goyim shall be killed, that they can have sex with children, a girl under 3 is legal, boys under 9, and all kinds of horrific things. They can cheat, steal from non-Jews, but we can't cheat, steal from them, and just a horrific state of affairs in their thinking. It's crazy. All right. Let's see here. I got the photo was originally found on a bizarre website, no longer online, of an anti-Semite named Tex Mars, and I don't think Tex Mars is an anti-Semite. If he's like me, he doesn't want this new world order and new age domination by these Zionists, who run something called Power of Prophecy Ministries. This website, while partially factual, insists that Bush is not only Jewish, but he is a practicing crypto Jew. And I don't know about you, but I've seen pictures of him at the Wailing Wall with a little cap on, and Obama at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem with the little cap on. So it just makes you wonder who these people really are. And in Henry Ford's material, many of these Jewish people took on the appearances of Christians so they could get in high places. So they say one thing and they do another. Although Marr has done some interesting research in the Jewish backgrounds of modern-day famous figures, he supposedly uncovered the Jewish backgrounds of John Kerry, Wes Clark, Madeleine Albright. He should have done better research on the Bush Talmud photo. So all I'm saying is I think it's a worthwhile effort to go look into the Talmud, know what these people think. And I know people who are not into religion, they don't really want to get involved in anything. People who are Christians understand their Christian theology, philosophy, but they don't understand this Talmudic thing, which is apparently getting into our court system. See it right there? So they're going to change the way our nation rules itself in the court system. And they have a set of rules for the Jewish people and another set of rules for the non-Jewish people. Very bizarre. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.